In today's video, I will be attempting to survive 100 days in Minecraft Pixelmon with fusion Pokemon only. So I've picked out 22 different Pokemon and I've fused them together with a host and a juice to make 11 different fusion Pixelmon. Throughout this 100 days, I will be exploring the world, trying to find all 22 Pokemon and then fusing them together to create all 11 fusion Pokemon. So, whilst you're watching along, make sure to comment down below what your favourite fusion Pokemon was, and if you want to see me do this again, comment down below what you'd want to see fused together next. And lastly, just before we jump into the video, with all of the love and support that you guys have been giving me recently, I've decided to make a Discord server. So if you'd like to join, there'll be a link in the description down below. Now without further ado, let's jump right into 100 days on Minecraft Pixelmon with fusion Pokemon only. I loaded in on day 1 and decided that I wanted to pick Froakie as my starter. There was a big reason for this, as I'd already created the fusion for my starter Pokemon. I wasn't going to reveal exactly what it is yet, so I'll let you guys use your imagination to try and figure it out. You'll only know once it evolves up into Greninja. My Froakie also starts with a new typing of Water Dark with the ability Dark Aura. His moves are Growl, Pound, Gust and Bubble. I then went around and collected up a bunch of wood and made up some basic tools. I then headed into the water and grabbed up a bunch of fossils, as I was going to need these for a later fusion. I then found a village where I set up house, and then caught my first Pokemon. This was a Marill. After that, I then went out and caught another Pokemon, which ended up being Rookidee. And then after that, I caught myself another Pokemon. This time I caught a Nincada. I then ended up catching a Dewpider and also a Larvitar. All of these Pokemon were going to be crucial for my fusions later in the video. I then had a Rayquaza spawn on me, which was insane, but unfortunately I didn't have any flying Pokemon, so I wasn't able to get up there to even attempt to catch this. After that, I kept exploring and found myself a Pumpkaboo, which I also ended up catching, along with a Linoone. Make sure to pay attention to all of the Pokemon that I catch here though, as all of them will be used as fusions later in the video. I then ended up evolving my Froakie into a Frogadier, and he looked awesome. If you figured out what the fusion of Frogadier is yet, make sure that you put it in the comment section down below. I then evolved my Nincada up into a Ninjask, and then found a Boss Tower, which I used to level up all of my Pokemon, where my Rookidee evolved into a Corvisquire. After that, I then caught myself a Durant, and then my Marill finally evolved into an Azumarill. And here was the first fusion. So I took Durant and I took Azumarill. I fused them together to create Durill, a fairy steel type with the ability Huge Power. His moves were X-Scissor, Crunch, Play Rough and Aqua Tail. After that, I then evolved my Larvitar up into a Pupitar. I then continued leveling and evolved my Linoone up into an Obstagoon. I then finally ended up evolving my Frogadier into a Greninja, and with that you finally know the fusion. Greninja and Yveltal combined together to create Graveltal, the Water Dark type, with the ability Dark Aura, and his moves were Shadow Sneak, Feint Attack, Roost and Water Shuriken. I then continued leveling by defeating a few raid dens and then a boss Sableye, which meant that my Dewpider finally ended up evolving into a giant Araquanid. After that, I then got a choice of a Megastone, so I decided to take the Mega Ring. After that, I explored a birch forest until I found 2 different Eevees. I caught the first one and then I caught the second one, as I'd need 2 evolutions for these fusions. I then headed to a savanna biome where I managed to pick up a Doduo. Then after that, I headed around for a little bit longer where I ended up finding a Shinx, which I ended up catching with my final ball, which was super lucky. After that, I then headed back to a Pokemart and bought myself a couple Pokeballs and Ultra Balls, which I then used to catch myself a Dreepy. After that, I kept exploring and caught myself a Zorua as well. I then went round and defeated a couple raid dens where I managed to get myself a Thunderstone, which I'd need for one of my Eevees, so I used it on my Eevee and got myself a Jolteon. With that, I'd almost completed quite a few fusions at this point. All I needed to do now was just level a bunch of them up, and then I could create a bunch of my fusion Pokemon, which was super exciting. I then defeated a couple more raid dens where I got another Thunderstone, but unfortunately I don't need that anymore, so it was pretty much useless. I then found an Ultra Space wormhole, so I built up to it and headed inside. After that, I then looted as many end cities as I possibly could to get myself some pretty decent tools which would help me on my quest to catch all of the fusion Pokemon. I then also collected up the Elytra, which would be amazing for travel as I don't actually have a flying type Pokemon just yet. I then defeated a boss Gengar, which got me some pretty good loot as well. I then continued defeating more raid dens, where I managed to get enough XP to evolve my Corvisquire into a Corviknight. And then I used a trade sim command to evolve my Pumpkaboo into a Gourgeist. And with that, I could finally create another fusion. So I took Gourgeist and I took Corviknight and I fused them together to create Corviknight, the ghost flying type Pokemon. With the ability Pressure, he has the moves Drill Peck, Shadow Ball, Leech Seed, and Steel Wing. I was super happy with how this one came out. I then headed out of Ultra Space where I encountered a Bucephalon 5-star raid den, which I decided to take on, and I actually managed to defeat it, getting me some pretty good loot as well and some good XP. After that, I then went mining for a little bit, as I needed to collect out a bunch of minerals, as I needed to create a certain item to get the next Pokemon that I'd need for my fusions. I then headed home and sold the relics that I found from the mineshaft and ended up with 250,000 Pokédollars. So I bought myself a stack of Ultra Balls and then headed home to smelt up all of my ores so that I could create all of the stuff that I would need. I then needed one more component, so I headed through to the Nether and then collected up a bunch of glowstone. Eventually though, once I finally gathered up all of the glowstone I would need, I then crafted up almost a stack of glowstone and then placed down an enchantment table in my little enchantment area and enchanted my hammer, as I need to create a bunch of aluminium plates. After that, I then had enough to create 12 PCs, which luckily got me all of the components I'd need to craft up Porygon. After heading into the battle with Porygon, I ended up catching him pretty easily, which led to my next fusion. So I took Jolteon and Porygon, and I fused them both together to create Jolteon, the electric normal type Pokemon. With the ability Download, it had Thundershock, Bite, Psybeam, and Double Kick as its moves. I then headed back to the boss tower where I grinded up levels for a little bit, as most of my fusions at this point just needed to take levels to evolve them up to their final forms. Which is where I then evolved my Doduo into a Dodrio, and then after that I used my Eevee to evolve into an Umbreon. And with that I had another fusion ready to go, which was Dodrio and Umbreon, and fused together they created Dobreon, the dark flying type. With the ability Synchronize, it had Tri-Attack, Wing Attack, Foul Play, and Moonlight. Shout out to Guinea for this fusion. I then evolved my Shinx into a Luxio, and then my Zorua also evolved up into a Zoroark. After that, I then had my Dreepy evolve as well into a Dracolock, and my Luxio finally evolved into a Luxray, which left me one step closer to quite a lot of my fusions. I then decided to transform my entire boss tower into a bit of a mob grinder, so that I could use 2 different spawners to spawn a bunch of Haunters and Chandelures, meaning I'd get twice the amount of XP and it'd be so much faster to level up all of my Pokemon. Which eventually led to my Dracolock finally evolving into a Dragapult, which would put me another step closer to another fusion. After that, I then evolved my Pupitar as well into a Tyranitar. And with that, I now had another 2 fusions. First, Dragapult and Zoroark fused together to create Dragark, the dark ghost Pokemon. With the ability Illusion, it had the moves Dragon Darts, Phantom Force, Night Slash, and Knockoff. And then secondly, I had Tyranitar and Ninjask. I fused those 2 together to create Tyranijask, the rock bug Pokemon. With the ability Speed Boost, it had the moves Stone Edge, Earthquake, Slash, and Swords Dance. After that, I finally had an entire team of 6 fusion Pokemon, and I was super happy with all of them, including the ones I also had in the PC, but I knew it wasn't over yet. I still had to collect up a bunch more fusion Pokemon. So I started by catching up a Yanma, and then I had another fusion ready. I just had to evolve my Yanma into a Yanmega. After that, I AFK'd for quite a few days when all of a sudden a Rayquaza spawned. After I noticed, I was absolutely ecstatic. I had to get over there as quickly as possible. I panicked a little bit, but then eventually I managed to get into a battle with Rayquaza. After entering the battle though, he mega evolved, so I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but eventually I finally managed to catch Mega Rayquaza. I was super happy with this, so I instantly got him out the PC, jumped on him, and mega evolved him, and now I finally had another fusion. I took Mega Rayquaza and Obstagoon, and I fused them together to create Rayquazoon. The Dragon normal type, with the ability Guts, it had the moveset Dragon Ascent, Dragon Claw, Night Slash, and Dragon Dance. This was one of my personal favourites, and shout out to Hawk as well, because I know he loves Rayquaza. I then headed back to the boss tower to grind up a bunch of XP to evolve my Yanma into a Yanmega, and eventually when I finally managed to evolve my Yanma into a Yanmega, I could finally create my next fusion. So I took Araquanid and I took Yanmega, and I fused them together to create Araquamega, the water flying type. With the ability Speed Boost, it had Bubble Beam, Bug Bite, Air Slash, and Hypnosis. After that, I headed over to the ocean and mined up a bunch of fossils, as I needed 2 fossils in particular. Eventually, I headed home, made up the fossil machine and the fossil cleaner, and then put in the 2 fossils I needed, which ended up getting me a Dracovish. This was one step closer to one of my final fusions. I then took on a Mega Boss Heracross with my Mega Rayquaza and instantly one-tapped it, which just shows how powerful Rayquazoon really is. I then headed through and found a fire gym. I went inside to challenge it as my first gym, but the Pixelmon gyms, how they work is the first 2 gyms that you challenge are all really low level, so I headed straight through the gym leader and got my first badge of this 100 days. I then headed into the flying gym again, and once again with this, they were all super low levels, so I went straight up to the gym leader and destroyed him pretty quickly, getting me my second gym badge of this 100 days. After that, I continued exploring when an Articuno spawned in a raid den, which I actually managed to defeat, which is pretty cool, and I also got some pretty good loot as well. I finally then found the ice gym, and with this gym, since it was my third one, it was actually equal level to me, so it was a little bit more difficult to defeat. Eventually though, once I beat all the trainers, I headed up to the gym leader, and after a pretty intense battle where I only survived with Rayquaza, I finally managed to get my next gym badge, the Ice Badge. I then headed through and defeated a bunch of raid dens to get loads of XP for my team to continue leveling. After that, I found a Mesa biome. In the Mesa biome, I managed to get a Shelgon, which was perfect as Salamence was one of the last Pokemon I was going to need. I then defeated another raid den and then headed through to the water gym to get my next gym badge. After taking down some difficult trainers, I finally managed to get to the gym leader, which I ended up defeating with Daryl as the MVP for this fight. I got myself the rain badge and then continued defeating loads more raid dens, as I needed to get a bunch of XP to eventually be able to evolve my Shelgon. Finally though, I got enough XP to evolve my Shelgon into a Salamence, and with that, I then took Salamence and Luxray and I fused them together to create Salaray, the Dragon Electric type. With the ability Intimidate, it had Dragon Claw, Zen Headbutt, Volt Switch, and Bite as its moves. I then headed through and defeated a couple more raid dens and also took out some boss Pokemon. After that, I then went travelling on my Mega Rayquaza for a long time because I was looking for more gyms and more raid dens to get more XP. Eventually, I came across the Fire Gym, which I headed inside with a Araquamega and took out pretty much all of the gym trainers pretty easily. After finally getting up to the gym leader, I challenged the gym. This time it wasn't an equal one, it was a bit lower level, so it was pretty easy for me to defeat, getting me the Heat Badge. After this, I continued taking out more raid dens on my journey to find more gyms, when I came across the Electric Gym. This one, once again, was a gym that was equal to my Pokemon's levels, so it was a little bit more difficult than the Fire Gym. Eventually though, once I beat all of the trainers, I headed through to the gym fight, which I managed to defeat pretty easily, only losing Tyranijask and Graveltal for this fight. I then stored all of my 6 gym badges inside my shulker box so I'd be able to keep track of which ones I had. I then continued defeating raid dens, where I managed to defeat a Kyurem raid den, which is pretty cool. After that, I continued defeating more raid dens until eventually I came across the Steel Gym. So I went through and defeated most of the trainers pretty easily with Salaray, and then I headed into the gym fight. Eventually, I finally managed to defeat the gym and got myself the Mineral Badge, which will be the 7th gym badge of this 100 days, meaning I only need one more gym badge to get all 8 gym badges. I then continued defeating more raid dens and mega bosses to get as much XP as I possibly could. I then came across a giant dark oak forest, and there was one more Pokemon that I'd need to catch for this 100 days. So I spent the next couple days just burning down the entire dark oak forest, so I had a lot more spawning platform for the legendary Pokemon that I needed to spawn. I then defeated a mega boss Beedrill, which was perfect because I ended up getting a Master Ball from the boss drop, which was so amazing for this, as the Pokemon I needed to catch was a legendary and would be pretty difficult to catch. Eventually though, it finally spawned, Necrozma. He was the final Pokemon that I would need for this fusion. After running into the battle, I instantly threw the Master Ball and ended up catching Necrozma, which meant that I finally had all the Pokemon I would need. So I took Dracovish and Necrozma and I fused them together to create Dracocrozma, the water psychic type. With the ability Prism Armor, it had Fishious Rend, Crunch, Night Slash and Psycho Cut. And now I had all 11 fusion Pokemon. All I'd need to do now is find the 8th gym and defeat it. So I ran into the Psychic Gym and was prepared to fight the gym leader. Eventually, when I headed into the gym fight, I managed to take it down pretty easily, getting me my 8th and final gym badge of this 100 days. And with that, I now had all 8 gym badges and I'd completed all 11 fusion Pokemon. So with that, I'd finally finished this 100 days. I really hope you guys enjoyed, as it was a ton of fun to record, edit, and create all of these Pokemon fusions for you guys. So if you do want to see more of this in the future, please do let me know in the comments, or like the video and subscribe to show me that you enjoyed the video, as I 100% want to make more Pixelmon fusion videos for you guys. So make sure that you comment down below your favourite fusion from this video, and maybe even new fusion Pokemon that you want to see me make for another 100 days video. So I hope you guys really did enjoy this one. I'll see you in the next one.